Good evening. Our topic for this evening is foreign trade, the American deficit. We're fortunate in having as our guest and panelist tonight Carroll Knicely, the former publisher and owner of the Glasgow Daily Times and former Commerce Secretary under Governor Collins. We also have Marshall Bailey, who is a popular and well-known part owner and managing partner of Bailey, Gibson, Buick, Pontiac, GMC Truck Incorporated. I hope I got all of that. He is the one and only dealer, I think, in Glasgow that doesn't have a foreign car dealership. I'll start the questioning by asking Mr. Knicely what all is involved insofar as foreign trade's concerned. I don't want to emphasize automobiles right now.
Well, of course, foreign trade is the purchasing of anything from a foreign country that comes into this country and the selling of any product that's either manufactured or grown in this country in a foreign country. And it can be anything from textiles to automobiles to computer parts to televisions, cameras, all of those things, most of which are consumer goods, but largely that is what has built our deficit. The demand for consumer goods from foreign countries, manufactured in foreign countries.
Do you have any idea of the percentage that the sale of automobiles in this country has contributed to the deficit?
Now we're talking about the balance of trade deficit.
Right.
The balance of trade deficit, somewhere in the range of 15 to 20%, is said to be the automotive and automotive components part of that deficit.
Do you have any idea about where the other deficit lies?
Well, there's a great deal of it in, again, in the consumer goods. Cameras, televisions, VCRs, textiles is a major portion of it. The textile industry has taken a real beating in the international trade market. It's a complete run of all the merchandise that might come in from foreign countries.
Do you have any breakdown insofar as the contribution on the part of Japan, the contribution on the part of Germany, and perhaps the contribution on the part of England?
Well, the largest portion of the deficit comes from the Japanese trade. There's no question about that.
But I believe that we do import more from Germany than we export there, and also less so insofar as the British Isles are concerned.
Well, I think that's true.
Now, we hear many things these days from many people. What generally has caused the deficit?
The demand for the goods that are manufactured by foreign countries. That's what's caused the deficit.
Now, Marshall, you any idea of what has caused the demand for foreign goods in the American consumer public?
Well, you know, when I was a little child, I remember going to Newberry's 10-cent store, and I thought it was probably as big as Walmart is now at that time. And I'd go through the toy section there, and I'd pick up something made in Japan, and we just laid it back down. But that's all changed. You know, when we pick up a Japanese product, we look at it, you know, as an item of quality, more quality than what we make. So whether that's truth or not now, you know, that's a perception maybe. But in automobiles, I can tell you that it has really changed. The quality is there in the American sector.
You're saying that the American automobile now is as good quality-wise as the Japanese?
Yes, I certainly think it is. It hadn't always been, though. I think that what happened is, maybe back in the 60s, I started in it in 69, and we had a good quality automobile back then. But, you know, my feeling is that probably what happened is that unions kept demanding, and I'm not against unions, but unions kept demanding more and more and more, and they got up to 90 or 95% of guaranteed pay for the workers, and they could just tack it on to the price of a car. They thought could just keep tacking it on, tacking it on. Well, partly I think what they did, they tacked the price on, and they lowered the quality. That's the way of lowering prices, is lowering quality. And they lowered that quality. Well, Japanese have always been good at seeing open doors. They still are. They saw a door open there, so they started improving their quality and penetrating this market up to where this day it's approaching 40%. Do you agree, Carroll?
Comment?
Well, of course, quality is a thing that begins with management and goes down through the production and through the workforce. If your workforce is not imbued with a quality-conscious work ethic, you're not going to get the quality. And if that's not required and demanded by management, you're not going to get it. And I think the lack of quality problems in American products, and particularly in the automobile industry, partly lies with management and partly lies with labor. Some of the things, I agree with some of the things that Marshall has said about the contribution of the labor problem to the overall problem of the automobile industry. But I think the main thing has been the workers' feelings about quality. They have not continued to turn out a quality product. And in fact, the latest studies still show that the very best made American automobiles still have greater number of defects reported by the consumer than the average Japanese-made automobile. So the problem is still there to some extent. It's narrowed. It's now in fractions instead of in tens of points of differential, but the differential is still there.
Well, am I to understand you that you are saying that management has been responsible for that?
I think management has been responsible for it, because you get in quality what management requires, and part of that is in training, part of that is in the attitude of the workers that's developed by management. So I think part of the problem rests with management.
Well, now, we have been hearing for several years, or at least I have, and I've read this, that if you bought an American car, you ought to try to get one that was built during the middle of the week and not buy one that was built on Friday or it was built on Monday. And a part of that has been attributed to the fact that they say that people are wanting to leave on Friday, and therefore they have fewer workers showing up for work, and that on the following Monday they are recovering from a big weekend and they aren't up to snuff in doing their particular jobs. Are you saying, first of all, that if that is true, that management is responsible for that?
Yes, I think management is responsible for it, because management has to set the tone. They have got to set the tone, and if they don't do it, they will get exactly what they're allowed. The interesting thing about what you said, Uhel, is that you're saying that the American people have said that for years.
Yes.
And we just raised all nature of thunder about a Japanese politician saying the same thing just within the last few weeks.
I realize that. I was going to get to that. You're anticipating me. I was going to get to that very thing. Marshall, insofar as you know, and of course you've been involved in selling the products of the American automotive manufacturers for years, was there any truth to those reports?
Well, I'm not sure. Let me give you a case study here. For instance, in Newmy, California, there's a joint GM venture by Toyota and GM. And the Chevrolet Geo sells somewhere around half as many as Toyota Corolla. I'm just talking about the ones built in California, not the ones that they export. They sell about half as many Geos. Same car, got a different plastic grill in it. No difference in the car, no difference in quality. Built by the same people. With a lot fewer dealerships, they sell a lot more Toyota Corollas. Now tell me why. It's called perception of quality.
Well, yeah, that gets back to your point that it's the perception of the American public, and that's one example where is the perception definitely that makes them buy the Corolla over the other one, because they're both made, as you say, as I recall, in a plant in California.
Yes, that's right.
And that is definitely a perception. I'm sure that some of you out there would have some questions of these two gentlemen, so I would remind you to call 651-8341, and we'd be delighted to have as many questions as you can call in, and I certainly would be delighted to ask these gentlemen to answer your questions. There has been much talk about the different systems in producing cars in Japan versus the American system. Can you comment on that, Carroll?
Yes, I can. I have been through General Motors plants, I've been through Ford plants, I've been through Toyota plants, I've been through the Tsutsumi plant of Toyota at Toyota City near Nagoya in Japan. That same plant was duplicated. When it was built, it was a state-of-the-art plant, and it was built and duplicated at Georgetown when we brought Toyota to Georgetown. That plant functions on an entirely different system, highly robotized, using numerically controlled machines to do virtually all of the work on the line, all of the heavy work on the line. They have quality circles where all of their people work as a team in various areas. They have the ability, any employee in the Tsutsumi plant and also in the Georgetown plant who sees a defect as that car is going along the line, any employee has the authority and the ability to stop the line. All he's got to do is reach above his head and pull a wire, and it stops the whole production line, and a supervisor is immediately on his bicycle going to wherever that point is that he has to see what the problem is, and the problem is corrected. Every employee is considered a quality control employee, and they work with much more enthusiasm and much more interest and much more concern than I have observed in the American assembly plants that I've been in. There's a different attitude, a different team spirit, a different sense of responsibility for the product that they produce.
Well, are you saying that as far as the American production line is concerned, that if somebody sees something wrong at a particular point in the line, that he can't do anything about it?
I'm not sure that it's a situation that he can't do anything about it. It's a situation that he doesn't do anything about it. It's a lack of a sense of responsibility for anything. The old saying, "That's not my job," you know, which is a typical American attitude in almost any industry. If you want someone to do this instead of that, they're likely to say, "That's not my job." That's a typical thing in industry when you employ people. That it does not exist in Japan.
You got any comments to
Yes,
make?
I do. I've been through plants, a lot of plants, and they have the same cord you pull. There's no difference. They got it from Japanese, but I don't see any difference at all in them. I mean, they're duplicating Japan. They're pulling the same string. They can stop that line just like that. I don't see any difference in it. I mean, it took them a while to learn that, but I see the same cooperation. I went to a new plant in Kansas, St. Louis, near Kansas, Wentzville, Missouri. And 1974, largest automobile plant in the world. They bought 140 acres of wheat field, GM did, and built a brand new plant from scratch. And they ran it the same way. I toured the plant. Any person there, the janitor could stop the line. It's that way now. They've come a long way. We sell vehicles that get 350,000 miles on them. Told a fellow tonight, came in there, he said, "Well, this vehicle I'm trying to buy has 88,000 miles on it." I said, "Doesn't matter. put a couple more hundred on it. It's American, it'll work. And, you know, I had a friend in Bowling Green, Bill Leachman, sold a van the other day to some of his kinfolks, an '89 GMC van. He put 228,000 miles on it in 2 years and sold it. Still a good van. So this perception of American quality is just dead wrong, in my opinion, that is. This is just my opinion.
Well, granted, let me just inject, granted that the newer plants like Saturn and the few new plants that have been built over the last few years do incorporate many of the Japanese techniques. But still, most of our automobiles in this country today are not built in that style plant. They're built in the old style plant. They're gradually phasing those out and bringing in the new style. But
I'll agree, Carroll, but the number one quality vehicle in General Motors, and the only car in the United States that's had an increase in sales in 1991 was Buick LeSabre, built in one of the oldest plants there is in Flint, Michigan, Buick City. The number one quality vehicle on the road. You can't keep them. Not one on my lot tonight.
I concede that. That's right. I know that's true.
Well, are you saying, at least implying, that there is a difference in the temperament of the American worker and the Japanese worker?
Well, there's a difference in the temperament of the worker. There's also a difference in the manner in which they get the component parts. You know, not all of the parts are made at the plant where the car is assembled. We can talk about assembly. That's one thing. The suppliers is another thing. The quality of the component parts that go into a Japanese car are much more stringently controlled by the Japanese purchasers than they are by the American purchasers. A Japanese plant, automotive plant, does not inventory. They don't buy 10,000 widgets that they're going to need over the next 10 months and have them shipped in and inventory them and put them in stock. They use what they call the Kanban system, which is just-in-time delivery. They expect their suppliers to deliver them what they need when they need it. Now, that's a two-edged sword. One, it does not require the assembler, the automotive assembly plant, to maintain a high inventory of parts. The other edge of that sword is that unless they are absolutely perfect, what they deliver to them, they don't have inventory and they shut down the production line. And that's not just at the automotive assembly plant, that's at every plant that supplies that plant all the way back to the very beginning. In other words, if we've got a plant out here that makes cables for automobiles. They buy component parts from different places and they expect to get just what they need for today and tomorrow's operations, and they want a truck there for the next day when the time comes. And if the quality of that part that comes in for that component is not perfect or near perfect, and that's why they demand perfection for what they get, then they're out of business. And if they're out of business, they can't deliver to the assembly plant a final cable that can go in that car that they're expecting for delivery in time for their production. So that is all part of this system of whether or not the quality is properly controlled. And a lot of it is worker attitude.
I believe they got that from Sam Walton, Uhel. They work along the same techniques, I believe. I agree with a lot of those things, and I think GM and the Big Three, for instance, have tried to copy a lot of that, and they do a great job at that. There's no doubt about that. They control their suppliers. But one thing I'd like to talk about is their worker in Japan. Are they a suppressed worker? They're subsidized. I believe that they're subsidizing prices with some suppression. They're working their employee for like 25% overtime. They're working 2,300 hours a year. In fact, the Ministry of International Trade is on their case pretty bad right now for that.
They work 45 hours a week.
And
they're aiming to go to 40 hours a week by 1994, 95.
Their unions are asking them to, and change the product cycle, I believe.
Well, as I understand it also, they do not have the amenities within the plant for their employees, that is in Japan, that you have in the plants here in America, and even that the Japanese plants here in America have. Is that correct?
That is true. Their plants are, to some extent, gloomy and do not have the conveniences. However, Toyota is making the first move in Japan in that direction right now. Their new Tahara plant will have more conveniences, more open space, more light and airy and easier working conditions, and they are working in that direction. But they are not oppressed workers. They are motivated workers. There's a different sense of work ethic than what we have, and I don't accept the fact that we have lost the work ethic in this country. I think we have a strong work ethic among a certain group of the people. Not everybody has that work ethic, but I'm sure not everybody over there does. Although everybody I've ever met in Japan appears to be so totally devoted and dedicated to their job and their work that it's unreal compared to what we have in this country.
We mentioned unions here earlier. What is the union situation in Japan? Do you know, either one of you?
Well, I am familiar with it to some extent.
Okay.
Let me say this, that the unions are basically intercompany unions. They are not like the United Auto Workers, where every worker that works in a automotive plant in Japan belongs to a union. They would not consider going on strike and endangering the activity of their company. If they had a problem with a union and they were on strike, they'd have wear an armband that said on strike, but they'd work just as hard every day as they worked before, because their dedication and devotion to their job, which is basically a lifetime job in Japan. If you go to work for a Japanese company and you just work, you've got a lifetime job. They take care of you from cradle to the grave, virtually, once you've started with them. They would not ever do anything that would be injurious to the company. They are dedicated to their company, totally and wholly. But the unions don't operate over there as they operate here.
Well, I have read that the man-hour production, or production per man-hour in Japan, not only automotive plants, but other plants, is a third or more greater than in America.
It is somewhat greater than it is in America, and yet they are able to more efficiently utilize the man-hours that they buy. One of the things that we heard for so many years about the Japanese automotive industry was that that they had cheap labor and that they had oppressed labor, and as a result they were manufacturing cars that they could bring over here and sell cheaper than we can manufacture. Well, the lie was put to that when they opened the Toyota plant in Georgetown. The only difference between Toyota and any American automotive plant, the principal difference is, of course, they do not have a union and they operate on the Japanese system.
Called dumping, isn't it, Carroll? What they call dumping?
Well, that's what they, well, if they were selling, no, dumping is if they sell the product cheaper than what it costs them to produce it. But that's not the case at Toyota at Georgetown. They're making a profit up there. They're selling the cars in competition, manufactured in this country with American labor, using the Japanese system, paying American labor rates, but not paying the union costs on top of the American labor rates, and still producing a car of comparable quality to that which is produced in Japan and marketing it in this country effectively and efficiently and profitably.
But does that necessarily prove that they still aren't dumping, in the sense that they're making cars in Japan and they could be making them at less cost than it cost them to make them in Georgetown, and bringing them over here and dumping them, getting the price that they're getting for their automobiles that are manufactured in Georgetown, but still less than it cost them in Japan?
Well, I don't think it's less than it costs them in Japan. What they do in...
I mean less than it cost them in America. They build them for less in Japan than in America.
Well, you're saying, let's go back to this thing about man-hours used to build a car. The Japanese simply, they may be less efficient in their man-hours. They are slightly less efficient in their man-hours, but they build the car with fewer man-hours, substantially fewer man-hours than an American automobile manufacturer does. So they can build the car cheaper.
Okay.
And they can build it cheaper here, they can build it cheaper over there. But they're not dumping the car or dumping anything unless they're selling it below what it costs them to make it and sell it at a reasonable profit. And I don't think any of the Japanese automobile manufacturers have been accused of dumping. There have been some.
Most of the accusations that I've seen about dumping is in the electronics industry.
That's true.
Right.
That's where most of the accusations have come from about dumping. What part, if any, has the fact that America, in essence, after World War II, rehabilitated Japan, played in their being able to obtain so much of the American market?
You want to address that?
I believe you better do that.
Well, no question. If you don't have to have a defense budget, you can do a lot of things from the government standpoint that you couldn't otherwise do. And there's no question but what the fact that the United States has paid for the defense budget for Japan has allowed the Japan national government to have funds that they could funnel into specific areas of industrial development, industrial manufacturing development that this country has never done and could not do. For instance, the machine tool industry. They targeted the machine tool industry in Japan as one they were going to take over worldwide, and they virtually did it. But the federal government provided special funding and subsidies for that they might not have been able to have provided had they not been getting their defense budget totally free.
Well, in the beginning, didn't we subsidize the rebuilding of their plants?
Oh, sure. Yes, we helped them with the actual physical building of their plants. We did the same thing with Germany.
Right.
You know, the interesting thing is we hear a great deal about, interesting to me is, we hear a great deal about the Japanese being a major contributor to our problems. We don't hear anybody say anything about the Germans. We don't hear anybody saying about the British, and they have more investment. Germans and British have more investment in this country than the Japanese do.
But we have investments there. We have more investments there, right?
Yes, we have investments there too. But
and it's easy to find an investment there. We can't go in Japan and buy an acre of ground and take 10 years.
That's a point.
You know that.
That's a very strong
guarantee,
point.
and that's exactly the reason, Carroll.
It's the open.
Now, what the problem here is that we talk about all this efficiency, all this quality, and we all believe in that. But the problem is that a Jeep Cherokee costs $24,000 in the United States, and it costs $40,000 in Japan. That is the problem.
And has a left-hand steering wheel.
The problem is that they own 40% of our market, and we don't own but 3 or 4 of theirs. That's the problem, and why? That's the problem.
Well, part of the problem
Betcha
is their tariffs. No question about that. I personally am a person who favors free trade. There's no way we could ever go back to isolationism. This country could not exist. Your Buicks could not be built without Japanese components.
I agree.
The Japanese components are coming into them. They couldn't be built without them. I favor free trade. I think there is a long way to go in opening up the trade balance with the Japanese. But it is a slow process, and part of the reason we have the problem with them is we don't understand their culture, and we don't understand their educational system. We don't understand how they think, how they act, and how they react. And they have their internal problems just as we do. One of the big issues being rice. They can't just simply open up their country to the import of rice, because that is a basic staple. They'd have a revolution that the farmers are growing, and you have to have an understanding of how their culture exists in order to have an understanding of why the trade problems do exist. You can't just close the market. There has to be a negotiated settlement, and it does have to be open. And I agree, we ought to have people over there doing construction. Great construction ought to be able to go over there and bid on things, but they can't.
Right.
You know.
Again, I would remind the viewers that we would like to have your calls. The number again is 651-8341. Surely some of you out there have some questions you'd like to ask either or both of these gentlemen about some of the things that they are discussing. I have read that getting into this matter of using Japanese parts for automobiles manufactured in America and vice versa. I think there are some American parts that are sent to Japan that are manufactured here. But I have read recently that most of the steel that is used for the manufacture of American automobiles now comes from Japan. Do either one of you know anything about that?
It used to.
I think that's changed in the last few years. I'm not sure what the figures. I don't have them with me. I have some figures jotted down here tonight, but I'm not sure about the steel. I know they've really penetrated the steel market as of 20 years ago, but it's somewhat changed, I understand.
Well, there have been some discussion about that in the press recently, that the big three have decided not to have as much sheet steel coming in as they had used from Japan in the past. There's been no confirmation of that from Japan, but there has been a good deal of discussion about that.
Well, again, particularly insofar as the steel question is concerned, and the fact that I think today we're importing more steel from all around the world than we're manufacturing in this country. Didn't we bring that on ourselves in that Japan and Germany and Italy and other countries, as a result of World War II, had to build new steel plants, and they upgraded the technology as they built them, and we in this country didn't upgrade our steel plants. We didn't invest in them and so forth, and now we're crying. But actually, isn't most of that our fault?
To a large extent it is. I know I worked with Armco up at Ashland in trying to get them to, or in helping them to modernize their plant and put in a new slab caster up there that they could do some things with that they weren't able to do before. Yes, there is a problem here in this country with the way we have advanced our technology. On the other side of that, there were, back a few years ago, some problems with steel dumping in this country from all around the world, where they were trying to drive our steel mills out of business, and did effectively put our steel production way down.
What do you see insofar as increased production in this country by foreign companies, not only automobile companies, but others? Do you foresee more of it, or there seems to be some resentment building? There's been a certain amount of resentment all along, but it seems that we are now hearing more resentment than we did a few years ago. So what do you see as for the future there, Marshall?
Well, I don't know. You know, I hear a lot about Buy America campaign, you know. This is related to automobiles, and I read in our automotive news letters from dealers, and some of them have gotten pretty nasty about it, I would say, and I would never resort to that. But for instance, using footage of Pearl Harbor and those things. But I think this Buy America thing is here to stay. Now, I read last week in the Kiplinger letter that they think it'll probably wane somewhat, and I suspect it will wane. But a lot of advertising is geared towards Buy America. We're having people now to come in and trade in their imports. We had a fellow 2 weeks ago to trade in 2 vehicles because of the Buy America campaign. And he traded in a 14,000-mile Honda Accord LX, which is a good automobile. It's a fine automobile. And but I think this thing is just going to snowball. I've never seen anything like it of the magnitude. I went to a Buick meeting in Cincinnati the other day, and dealers from the Cleveland, Cincinnati area, and I've never seen anything like it, the Buy America campaign. So I think it's here to stay. I think the Japanese recognize this, and I think they're going to police this thing themselves. I really believe they will.
You agree or disagree?
Well, I have some comments I'd like to make on it a little bit later.
You'd like to make on it a little bit later. I realize they want to break here now for a question. What's the question?
Toyota and Mitsubishi have not only been accused of dumping here in the United States, but they've been found guilty by the federal government of dumping minivans, that is, selling them cheaper here than they do in their own country. They've already been found guilty of that this year. One of our problems with our trade surplus is the parts business. Japan ships so many parts over here, they say our parts are not of quality enough for their cars. Yet many parts that are made here in the United States are good enough for Mercedes-Benz and BMW, yet not good enough for Japan. I think what we all want is free trade. What we're not getting from Japan is fair trade. Thank you.
Any comment by either one of you? Marshall?
Well, I believe y'all recognize that as being Mike Hyde, and thanks for watching, Mike. But I agree with Mike. He has Mike is well read, and I think there's been a lot of these things going on, and it's back to that perceived quality again. I think that's where it's at. And perception, it's just like they say, this recession is it's just perceived. But I guess you could ask a fellow that's starving to death, and he wouldn't agree with that. But I think it's all in perception. The parts are good enough, I believe, and I believe that of great quality at this time.
You said you had some comments to make.
Some comments about Buy America. My question is, what is an American product? A Zenith television that's you buy, that's made in Mexico, put together in Mexico. The NUMMI plant at Fremont, California, that's a joint venture with General Motors and Toyota. A Gap polo shirt that's made in Honduras. A Chevy Lumina, it's made in Canada. Burger King, you go eat a hamburger, that's owned by a British company. Where are you going to stop the A&P food stores, owned by Germans? Columbia Pictures, owned by the Japanese. Bic pens that come from France. RCA TVs, owned by France. Era shirts, owned by the French. Vaseline, British-Dutch company. You go out and put Firestone tires on your car? They're not Firestone tires. Bridgestone, a Japanese company, owns Firestone. Holiday Inns, you stay in a Holiday Inn, you're sending money to Great Britain. What is an American product? You drink Tropicana orange juice? A Canadian company owns it. We had this situation where in Greece, New York, the city fathers were going to buy American. And the low bid for their earth-moving equipment was a Komatsu. That's a Japanese company. So they decided, we'll take the next higher bid. We're going to buy us a John Deere. Well, come to find out, the Komatsu was made up in Illinois, 100% or 95%. And the John Deere was made in Japan.
It's called free trade, Carroll.
Well,
nobody's against that. But people are against buying a Jeep Cherokee. The Japanese people selling a Jeep Cherokee for $40,000, and it costs $24,000 here. They're not against free trade.
But
they're against fair trade.
Right, but
unfair trade.
When you're talking about selling an American automobile in Japan, you go into the showrooms over there, and all of the American automobiles have left-hand drive steering wheels.
Right.
When the Japanese started marketing automobiles over here, you didn't see any right-hand drive steering wheels. They came in here with left-hand drive steering wheels. That's, again, management decision as to how to market there. Granted, the tariffs are high on those cars, but you've got to manufacture a car that's wanted in order to be able to get into the trade. One of the things that has been done, the bourbon industry has broken into Japan. It's
Sure.
It's taken several years to do it, but they've broken in, and it's high, but they're marketing that product.
I understand
in
they
Japan.
like it,
They do like it.
especially Maker's Mark.
Yeah.
here.
Well,
Wild turkey.
I read recently where another company that had broken into the market over there was Toys for Us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That they're expanding over there, and they have broken in.
They plan to build, I believe, somewhere around 100 stores there, I understand.
I've been in one of their stores, store locations there. You know, of course, that Ford owns 24% of Mazda, General Motors owns 38% of Isuzu, and Chrysler owns 11% of Mitsubishi. Ford owns Jaguar, General Motors owns Lotus, Chrysler owns Lamborghini.
Daewoo.
Yeah. So, you know, you've got you've got the big three in this country involved so deeply in the international marketplace,
Right.
that it's difficult really to draw the line as to what's American and what's buy American.
Well, I think we'll have some legislative content rule, Carroll.
Oh, I think
Without a
we will,
doubt,
too.
in the next few years. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But let me read you something here. This is our automotive news. We get it weekly, and this says that speak along the lines of them policing their own problem. Says Japan's powerful Ministry of International Trade and Industry is pressing a reluctant Toyota Motor Corporation to rein in its expansion plans and become a kinder and gentler competitor. So they recognize that they've got a problem, they better do something about it. Or we'll take care of it for them. The people will, I believe. And so another high-level official was quoted saying, unless Toyota changes its expansionist policy, Japan itself will die. It's pretty strong, isn't it? Unless Toyota changes its management style, the government should change Toyota. This comes from Japan, the Ministry of International Trade. I didn't say this now. Toyota alone, the article pointed out, accounts for more than 20% of Japan's $41 billion trade surplus with the United States. That's from the came in on our automotive news 3 or 4 days ago. This is our automotive news.
It is somewhat remarkable that Japan, which has virtually no natural resources of its own, has now become, I suppose, the financial expert, if not the industrial leader of the world. And it's not only in this country that we're hearing about it, and in many instances there seems to be much fear of them, but really without the natural resources, is there any real need to fear them in the final analysis? You've been there. What's your comment, Carroll?
I would certainly have no fear of them. I think you just have to understand that they have a single-minded purpose when they go after a certain sense of direction, and they marshal all the resources and aim at accomplishing what they set out to accomplish, and generally they accomplish it. They are motivated by productivity, high productivity, and by manufacturing. This country has been giving up a high percentage of its manufacturing job base. We spent virtually all of the mid-70s to the late 80s not building new manufacturing facilities in this country, but rather doing leveraged buyouts and making major financial arrangements.
Quick profits.
That's right. Quick profits.
Instead of investing for the future.
And you were not investing for the future. The Japanese work on a long-run basis. Another people say about, well, they operate at a loss. Yes, they'll operate at a loss for 3 to 5 years in a manufacturing facility with the long range in view, that as they get their people trained, as they get their equipment up to efficiency, they will then be able to produce at a higher level, at a lower cost per unit, and be able to make extraordinary profits. And they have done that in their country. We tend, from a management standpoint in this country, to work toward the next quarter. How much profit can we do for the next quarter?
But let's back up again and get back to what Marshall was saying, that they're probably going to cure their own ills. And isn't the fundamental basic in that conception, the realization on their part, that ultimately, unless there is more fair trade, there are going to be tariff barriers insofar as they're buying stuff, and they've got to buy from other parts of the world virtually everything they manufacture. They've got to buy and import the component parts. And if the tariffs around the world are raised against them to where they can't do that profitably, isn't that going to do away with their lead in finances and industry?
Unless they're able to move their manufacturing facilities offshore to the location that they are going to deliver the product.
Now that leads me into my next question. Okay, I had a slight method in my madness here. Now, is it to the advantage of the United States and the rest of the world to permit that? Should we do it or shouldn't we do it?
Well, from my standpoint, I think Kentucky is a perfect example. We weathered the recession, and all of the economists will tell you that Kentucky had less of a recession impact than any of the states in this region of the United States. We weathered it. One of the reasons we weathered it was the automotive industry in this state. The fact that Toyota was located at Georgetown, they'll have 5,200 people working there, $2 billion worth of investment at that one location, and satellite plants producing automotive parts, many of them joint ventures with American companies, producing automotive parts all over the state, creating jobs probably for another 10,000 people and probably 2 or 3, maybe $4 billion of additional investment. And all of those things were coming online as this recession was coming in. And those facilities are in production, and those people are working, and they're drawing paychecks. And we've got one of the plants right here in this city with 200 or 300 employees that's doing that. So yes, from my standpoint, I would far rather have people in this country buying Japanese cars made at Georgetown, Kentucky, from components that are made out in various communities over the state than buying Japanese or German cars that are made in Japan and Germany and shipped over here and sold. I'd lots rather have the jobs and the investment, because in my opinion, the basic thing is quality of life for our people. And that quality of life comes from jobs, and jobs come from investment. And if we're not getting the investment from other industry, we ought to get it wherever we can get it.
Comment, Marshall?
I don't think well, and I'll agree with all of that, every bit of it. And we should thank you tonight for helping get that plant. It's been great for the state of Kentucky, there's no doubt about it, and all their suppliers. But nobody has anything against that. It's great. But that's not the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is they own 40% of our market, and we own 3 or 4% of theirs. And that's a problem right there. We can't penetrate their market. If we penetrate their market to 40%, it wouldn't be anything like ours. It would be a lot of difference. General Motors sold 500 automobiles in January in Japan. How many do you think they sold here? Now, let me tell you one more thing I want to talk about before we close this program. And I don't want you to think this is a Japan bashing 101. I'm not against the Japanese people at all. I'm just against some of the ways that they restrict us. But for instance, your big three, General Motors, they promote minority candidates for dealers, state of Kentucky. In the United States. General Motors has somewhere around 100 dealers, black dealers, minority dealers. Chrysler has somewhere around 76, I believe, and Ford has about 245. Toyota sold 50,000 more cars than Chrysler Motor Corporation did. They have 8 black dealers. They have no minority dealer program. The president of NAACP has asked blacks not to buy imports. Right now, blacks are buying 30% import, as opposed to nationally about 40%. So they have they're not promoting minorities at all. And the big three has spent lots and lots of money in promoting minorities with venture capital at the tune of huge losses in some cases. And they don't want to address that problem at all. And I think it should be brought out.
I think you've just brought it out. We'll take a break now for another call-in question.
I'd like the response from both gentlemen as to whether or not you buy a Toyota made in Georgetown, Kentucky, would that be buying American? Thank you.
I think so.
Absolutely. It's 75% of the content of the Camrys made in Georgetown is American content at this point, as is 75% of the new Mazda 626 sedan that's coming out. That will be 75% American content as well. So the Georgetown Camry is an American car.
And a great car.
Let's get back to this lack of alleged fair trade on the part of Japan, and I think it is more than an allegation. It's certainly true in many instances, one of which not only applies to Japan, but also applies to the European community, and that is the tariffs against American agricultural products. They're very high in Japan. They're less high, but they're still high in Europe. Now, why is it we hear more about it from the standpoint of the cars than we do from agricultural products? Carroll, you got any idea about that?
Well, the automobile is a staple of the American economy. Whenever the automobile industry in the United States is hurting, the overall economy is hurting, and you'll see the economy recover when the automobile sales move up.
Well, isn't that also true of your agricultural economy?
No, not fully, because we export a great deal of our agricultural product. We export more of our agricultural product proportionally than we do our automobile manufactured products. We also hear more about, you don't hear about the automobiles from Europe. You hear about the automobiles from the Japanese side. One of the reasons I think that is, frankly, is because the Japanese look different than we do. You don't fuss about the British investment because the British look like us and talk like us. You don't fuss about the German investment because you don't recognize them when they come into your community as being different. The Swedish or the Danish or any of those people, you don't feel that way about. But the Japanese look different.
Well, haven't I been seeing, though, that the amount of imports of automobiles from Germany and England and France and so forth is actually declining?
Yes, it is declining.
But it's not declining, it's still increasing as far as the Japanese are concerned.
Again, that's marketing and product. That's the demand. You don't sell somebody something they don't want. It's marketing of a product that is desirable and people want to buy.
Well, isn't it also true, though, that we sell more products and have less problems getting into the European market than we do the Japanese market?
To some extent, that is true.
Well,
but the Japanese market, our people have a tendency to have difficulty selling in the Japanese market. I've attended trade shows at MITI, the Ministry of Industry and Trade in Japan, have put on trying to get American companies to sell there. I've actually taken companies from this state over there to show their products and to market their products to the Japanese. But it's so difficult and so different, and you have to deal with an entirely different language, an entirely different mode of thinking and talking, which is not true on the European market, even though the language may differ. It's not as difficult to converse business-wise with the French or the Germans as it is with the Japanese, generally speaking.
Well, how come they learn our system so quickly and we don't learn theirs?
Because we haven't worked at it as hard as they have.
All
Anything they do with great intensity.
Sure.
What have we done here, though, in order to meet that difference?
Not much.
Why?
Virtually everybody in the upper echelons of Japanese business and industry speak English. How many people you know speak Japanese? American businessmen.
Well, but
They have a
that's
lot of reasons to, though, don't they?
Huh?
They're taking a lot of our money home.
Yes, but they started doing that a long time ago in the low grades.
but
We don't even teach a foreign language in our low grades.
the same thing is true in Europe. We don't speak we don't speak German as a rule. We don't speak French. We don't speak Italian. We really don't speak Spanish very well, and yet we don't have those problems over there.
But it's easier to work it out with the French or the Germans or the Spanish than it is with the Japanese. The cultures are more similar to ours because we came from there.
I often hear that. I wonder whether that's the basic problem. I really do. I hear you. I've heard it before. I know where you're coming, but I don't know as I necessarily buy that, but maybe so. Is the answer, and I think this is a very important question, is the answer increased tariffs insofar as this country is concerned?
Well, if we increase tariffs to the point that it would affect the automotive industry, we would affect our own automotive industry more dramatically and more drastically than we would affect the Japanese industry, in my opinion.
What's your answer, Marshall?
I think the answer is really, it's a simple answer, but I think it's in awareness. I think when the big three CEOs traveled to Japan with President Bush and a lot of other business people just recently, I think it's made an awareness available to people that hadn't been available before, even down into your elementary schools. They're aware of this thing right now, and I think that will be a big driving force in changing it. Like there again, I say it's not against quality. It's got nothing to do. It's in perception of quality, and it's in these big, huge trade deficits, which is very unfair. And I'd like to read something here that a dealer in Chicago said. It was kind of simple, but he said, "Our country is unusual. I believe in helping anybody if we can, but it's like throwing your own family out of your house and feeding some strangers. I've always thought that you feed your own family first. Americans should take care of Americans. That is what the Europeans do. That is what the Japanese do. That is what the Koreans do. That is what the Mexicans do."
I think that's a point well taken. I would remind the audience as well as the two guests that this matter of increasing tariffs can be dangerous.
I'll agree.
There was legislation known as the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act of 1930 that was designed to protect U.S. goods from the very things that are happening to them in this country today. And that legislation raised tariff rates in this country from 39 to 49% on agricultural goods, and it raised them from 31 to 34% on all other types of commodities that were sent to this country. The Americans started that with the Hawley-Smoot Act. The other countries react, and virtually all historians and virtually all economists now agree that that was the single most cause of the greatest depression in this country and the greatest worldwide depression. And I think that when we start talking about tariffs, we better remember some history. I think our time is about up. We appreciate having you call in. We would appreciate more calls. We will have another program in the third Monday in March, and we would invite you to listen and call in at that time. Thank you very much.